October 29, 1943. Stalag Luft III, Sagen, Germany. 3 British RAF officers stand at the edge of the exercise field, 150 feet from the perimeter wire. Between them and freedom lies open ground constantly watched by guards in elevated towers. No cover, no concealment, no way to dig without being seen. Lieutenant Michael Codner looks at the vaulting horse his fellow prisoners are using for gymnastics. A simple wooden box, hollow inside, carried daily to the same spot for exercise. The guards barely notice it anymore. It's just part of the routine. Codner turns to Flight Lieutenant Eric Williams and Flight Lieutenant Oliver Philpot. What if we dig from inside the horse? They carry it to the same spot. We're inside. We dig while everyone else exercises. They carry us back. We never cross open ground. The guards never see us. Williams stares at him. That's either brilliant or completely insane. Philpot does the mathematics in his head. We'd be digging in the most exposed part of the compound. 150 feet from the wire means guards have clear sight lines. One mistake and we're caught immediately. But Codner says it's the one place they'd never expect a tunnel. Everyone else digs from the barracks. We dig from the middle of the exercise field, in broad daylight, while guards watch. The 3 men look at each other. The plan violates every principle of escape tunneling. It's audacious, dangerous, and just crazy enough that it might work. Before we continue, if you're fascinated by the ingenious deception tactics that made impossible escapes possible, hit that subscribe button. 71% of you watching aren't subscribed yet, and you're missing educational history content like this every week. Stalag Luft III, the same camp that would later see the Great Escape, held approximately 10,000 Allied airmen in 1943. The Germans ran it as a model camp, following Geneva Convention protocols. Prisoners received adequate food, medical care, and recreational opportunities. In return, the Luftwaffe expected prisoners to obey camp rules and not attempt escape. But RAF officers considered escape a duty. Article in the Military Code of Conduct stated that prisoners should attempt escape when possible to tie down enemy resources and maintain pressure on German security. The problem was that Stalag Luft III was designed to prevent escape. The camp sat on sand that made tunneling difficult. Guard towers provided overlapping observation of the entire compound. Seismic detectors buried around the perimeter detected underground digging. Regular inspections searched barracks for tunnel shafts. Previous escape attempts had all failed. Tunnels discovered. Forged papers confiscated. Escapees caught within days. The Germans had refined their security procedures through experience. Michael Codner, Eric Williams, and Oliver Philpot were not professional engineers. Codner was a pilot. Williams had been a journalist before the war. Philpot was a mining consultant, though not a mining engineer like Wally Floody, but all 3 were persistent problem solvers who refused to accept that escape was impossible. The vaulting horse plan emerged from observing German guard behavior. The guards watched for suspicious activity, prisoners loitering near the wire, groups gathering near barracks, any pattern that suggested tunnel preparation. But the guards didn't watch the vaulting horse. Prisoners used it daily for gymnastics. The Germans encouraged exercise, believing fit prisoners caused fewer disciplinary problems. The horse was carried to the same spot each day. Prisoners vaulted over it for 30 minutes, then it was carried back to storage. The guards saw the routine so often they stopped paying attention. That psychological invisibility was the foundation of the entire plan. The wooden horse was approximately 5 feet long, 3 feet high, and 3 feet wide. Hollow inside, strong enough to support prisoners vaulting over it, light enough that 4 prisoners could carry it. Codner's plan was to modify the horse to carry diggers inside. 2 prisoners would hide in the hollow interior. 4 prisoners would carry the horse to the exercise field. While prisoners vaulted outside, the 2 inside would dig. After 30 minutes, the horse would be carried back with the diggers and excavated sand hidden inside. The engineering challenge was enormous. They'd be digging in open ground 150 feet from the wire. The tunnel had to go straight down at least 12 feet to avoid seismic detectors, then horizontally 150 feet to pass under the wire. Total excavation, approximately 162 feet. The tunnel cross-section had to be small to minimize excavated sand. They calculated 18 inches by 18 inches would just barely allow a man to crawl through. That volume meant approximately 1,600 cubic feet of sand total, all of which had to be excavated, brought up through the shaft, hidden in the vaulting horse, carried across the compound, and disposed of without the Germans noticing. In 30-minute sessions, every day for months. Williams was a journalist, which made him skilled at planning and organization. He created a schedule. Construction would begin July 8, 1943. They estimated completion by October. That assumed no collapses, no discoveries, no injuries, and consistent access to the vaulting horse. The first technical problem was the shaft. They needed to dig straight down 12 feet in loose sand without the walls collapsing. Professional miners used timber shoring. The prisoners had no access to timber officially, but they had bed boards. Each bunk bed had wooden slats. Steel too many, and the bunks would be obviously depleted, but a few boards per bunk, spread across multiple barracks, might go unnoticed. They calculated they needed 80 boards for shaft shoring. It took 2 weeks to acquire them through careful, systematic theft. The second problem was sand dispersal. Unlike other tunnels that could disperse sand gradually across the compound, the vaulting horse tunnel required removing all excavated sand immediately. They couldn't leave sand piles near the digging site. Guards would notice. They designed canvas bags that fit inside the hollow horse. The diggers would fill the bags. The carriers would lift the horse with bags inside. The sand would be emptied in the barracks, then dispersed through the standard penguin method used in other tunnel operations. The third problem was air. A shaft 12 feet deep contains approximately 40 cubic feet of air. A man consumes about 0.5 cubic feet of oxygen per minute. Without ventilation, diggers would suffocate within 10 minutes. They couldn't install air pumps like the Great Escape tunnels used, too complex for the limited space and time available. Instead, they relied on natural convection. The shaft opening allowed some air circulation. Diggers worked in short shifts, 10 minutes maximum, to avoid oxygen deprivation. The fourth problem was concealment of the shaft opening. When the vaulting horse was removed, the shaft entrance had to be invisible. Guards walked across the exercise field regularly. Any disturbed sand would be investigated immediately. They designed a wooden trapdoor covered with sand. When closed, it matched the surrounding field perfectly. The trapdoor was light enough for diggers to open from below. It rested on a frame just below the surface. Construction began July 8, 1943. The first day they excavated 2 feet. The sand was loose and unstable. They installed temporary shoring using bed boards. By day 3, they'd reached 6 feet depth. Then came the first crisis. On day 4, a section of the shaft wall collapsed, nearly burying the digger. They spent 2 days reinforcing the shaft with additional boards before continuing downward. By July 25th, the shaft reached 12 feet. They began horizontal excavation toward the wire. Progress slowed dramatically. Horizontal digging was more difficult than vertical. The digger worked lying down, excavating with a small trowel, filling bags with sand, passing them back to the shaft. They could remove approximately 6 cubic feet of sand per session. At that rate, they needed 260 sessions to complete the tunnel, nearly 9 months, but they refined their technique. They learned to work faster. They improved the bag system. They optimized the trapdoor opening. By August, they were removing 8 cubic feet per session. That reduced the timeline to 200 sessions, 6 to 7 months. The psychological strain was intense. Every day, they carried the vaulting horse to the same spot, knowing that discovery meant solitary confinement at minimum, possibly worse. Every session, diggers worked in near-total darkness 12 feet underground with minimal air, knowing that collapse could kill them. The physical toll was severe. Diggers lost weight from the cramped conditions and poor air quality. They developed respiratory problems from sand dust. Their hands were constantly torn and bleeding from the excavation work, but they continued, day after day, session after session. Slowly, the tunnel extended toward the wire. The Germans remained oblivious. The vaulting horse had become so routine that guards rarely watched it. When they did glance over, they saw prisoners exercising normally, nothing suspicious. In September, the tunnel passed under the perimeter wire. They were beyond the fence, but they needed to extend further to emerge in the forest beyond the cleared zone around the camp, another 30 feet minimum. By October 1st, the tunnel had reached 140 feet. They estimated 2 more weeks to reach the safe exit point. Then came the second crisis. On October 12th, a prisoner vaulting over the horse landed heavily, cracking one of the supporting boards. The horse sagged noticeably. Guards looked over. The prisoners immediately began an argument about who had damaged the horse. They created a distraction, drawing guard attention away from the vaulting spot. Other prisoners quickly carried the damaged horse back to the barracks. Repairs took 3 days. They reinforced the structure with metal strips salvaged from tin cans. The modified horse was actually stronger than the original. On October 15th, they resumed digging. By October 25th, the tunnel had reached 158 feet. They decided that was sufficient. The exit point was in the forest, 30 feet beyond the cleared zone. October 29th, 1943. The escape was scheduled for that night. 3 men would go: Codner, Williams, and Philpot. They'd worked on the tunnel for 114 days. They'd excavated approximately 580 cubic feet of sand. They'd installed 82 bed boards as shoring. They'd made 225 trips in the vaulting horse. At 2,100 hours, after evening roll call, the 3 men entered the tunnel. Codner went first, then Williams, then Philpot. They crawled through the 158-foot passage, breathing the stale air, feeling the wooden shoring press against their shoulders. At the exit point, Codner broke through the surface. He emerged in darkness in the forest 30 feet beyond the wire. Williams followed. Then Philpot. They were out. The 3 men separated immediately, prearranged routes, forged papers, civilian clothing hidden in the tunnel. They had practiced their cover stories for months. Codner headed northwest toward the Baltic coast, planning to stow away on a Swedish ship. Williams went southwest toward Switzerland. Philpot headed north toward Danzig, now Gdansk, hoping to reach Sweden via Baltic shipping. The escape wasn't discovered until the next morning's roll call. By then, the 3 men had 12 hours head start. The Germans searched frantically, but found no trace of how they'd escaped. The tunnel entrance, hidden under the trapdoor in the exercise field, remained undiscovered for several more days. All 3 men succeeded. Codner reached Sweden on November 1st. Williams reached Gibraltar on November 12th. Philpot made it to Sweden on November 3rd. They were the only successful escapees from Stalag Luft III until the end of the war. The Great Escape 7 months later would get 76 men out, but only 3 would reach freedom. The wooden horse escape got 3 men out, and all 3 made it home. When the Germans finally discovered the tunnel, they were astounded. The engineering was crude compared to the sophisticated Great Escape tunnels, but the deception was perfect. The vaulting horse had been sitting in plain sight for months. Guards had walked past it daily. Nobody suspected. A German security report written in November 1943 stated, "The vaulting horse escape demonstrates that prisoners will exploit any routine activity for escape preparation. Guards must maintain vigilance even during seemingly innocent recreational activities." The psychological principle of hiding in plain sight was employed with exceptional success. After the war, Eric Williams wrote a book about the escape titled The Wooden Horse. It became a bestseller. A 1950 film adaptation brought the story to worldwide attention. The film emphasized the planning, the daily routine, the psychological pressure, and the ultimate success. The real engineering achievement wasn't sophistication, it was consistency. digging the same tunnel from the same spot day after day without the Germans noticing. That required discipline, planning, and understanding of human psychology. The vaulting horse escape proved that sometimes the best hiding place is in plain sight. That routine creates invisibility. That guards stop seeing what they see every day. Those lessons applied far beyond prison camps. Modern security training uses the wooden horse escape as a case study in security through obscurity failures. How routine breeds complacency. How unusual doesn't mean suspicious. The principles show up in modern heist planning, corporate espionage case studies, and security protocol design. Any security system that relies on guards watching for suspicious activity can be defeated by making suspicious activity look routine. Today, a memorial at the former Stalag Luft III site includes information about the wooden horse escape. Museum displays show a reconstruction of the vaulting horse, complete with the hidden compartment. Visitors can see how two grown men could fit inside the hollow structure. Educational materials explain the engineering, the shaft construction, the trapdoor design, the sand dispersal system. But they also explain the psychology, how routine creates invisibility, how guards stop seeing familiar objects, how audacity can succeed where caution fails. Michael Codner, Eric Williams, and Oliver Philpot survived the war. They returned to Britain, received commendations for their successful escape, and resumed civilian lives. None of them ever dug another tunnel, but their engineering solution, simple yet effective, demonstrated something important. Expertise isn't always about sophisticated techniques. Sometimes it's about understanding human behavior and exploiting it through clever deception. The wooden horse tunnel wasn't the longest, wasn't the deepest, wasn't the most sophisticated, but it succeeded where more elaborate tunnels failed, because the engineers understood that the weakest point in any security system isn't the technology, it's human attention, and they built a tunnel directly underneath where the guards were watching, hidden by the one thing guards had learned to ignore, a routine piece of gymnastics equipment. Sometimes the best engineering solution is the one nobody expects, not because it's technically brilliant, but because it exploits human psychology. The guards at Stalag Luft III were looking for tunnels from barracks. They never imagined anyone would be crazy enough to dig from the middle of the exercise field. That's why it worked, not because the engineering was superior, but because the location was unthinkable, until 3 RAF officers thought it, then spent 4 months proving that unthinkable doesn't mean impossible.